Hey everyone, I'm Derek Burbidge of Cardero Clothing. I'm here with Marco Russo of Russo Wealth Management. It's part of Raymond James. Did I say
Yep.
all that right?
Yeah, you did.
All right. So kind of give us a quick little background about kind of your business and when you got into it with your dad and kind of what you guys do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me first off. So yeah, I've been in the business for, it was 10 years in June.
Okay.
Started with my dad at another firm. Due to some family stuff, I decided to join him and help him out as his assistant, while I got all my licensing. Once I was licensed, moved into an associate role and started working together. At that point, that's up in Kelowna. We moved down here in 2013, my wife and I, with our family. So at that point, we couldn't continue working together with the firm we were at. 2018, we had the opportunity to join Raymond James, put the practices back together, which was fantastic. It's what we've always wanted. And then started Russo Wealth Management at that point. So really what we do is full service financial planning for people. We start with the fundamentals of how to build a proper budget, all the way up to investment management, and then how to pass your estate on to the next generation as tax efficiently as possible.
Okay. And you're married to, a lot of people might know in the wedding industry, your wife, Justine, and you got 2 kids?
Yeah. Married, 2 kids. You don't know how often I get oh, you're Justine's husband. Just within our circle of friends and stuff. But yeah, she's owned her own photography business for almost 11 years now. Justine Russo Photographer is her deal. Met in college, so married college sweetheart. I was still in university when we got together and got married. 2 kids, 10 and 7.
Okay.
So we're navigating the back to school, but we're also navigating the 2 different schools now. Okay. Because our son's in middle school and our daughter's in elementary school. So.
Okay, so you got a lot.
Been a good week. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work with Justine. She's done photo shoots for us. She's done a lot of weddings of clients that we've had, and like I publish her photos all the time. She does awesome work. So I kind of to jump into it here. I talked 2 weeks ago. You know, Anand Athaviram of Watson Gopal. I talked to him 2 weeks ago about protecting your wedding deposits. Obviously, that's a big issue right now. That video's got a lot of views just because it's such a hot topic. But one thing that you got to think about before you get married is setting a budget. So before even putting those deposits in, like what should people be doing? You're about to get married. You may have already joined bank accounts. You may already be living together. You may not be. What should people be thinking about right now when it comes to wedding budgeting? What are the top kind of things they should be looking at?
You know, it's changed so drastically from when I got married. We're 13 years in December. For us, it was very simple. We found a venue that did an all-inclusive. So we knew what the price was going in, and we just picked what we could afford at the time and what we wanted. Now there's a lot more individualization and customization of weddings. So you usually have 15 to 20 different vendors that you're dealing with to try and put one of these events together. The biggest thing I've always kind of preached or talked about with my clients when they're in this situation, or when people have asked me about it, is figure out what you want to invest in and figure out what you can afford to go with budget stuff on. So, you know, not to be biased, but photography usually is a way for people to remember events. So it might be something, if that's something that's important to you, you might want to invest a little bit more into that aspect of the day. Personally, you can see behind me, I have racks of suits. I wear this all the time, but I love to dress this way as well. One of the things that I regret the most about how I budgeted for my part of the day was that I decided to go with rentals instead of buying a suit.
Yeah, you know my story. It's the same thing. I was brutal.
Yeah, and you know what? It was the same with me. And it took me, I think I had to get 3 suits brought in just because I don't fit off the rack.
Mm.
I never have. So it was hard for me to find something that looked halfway decent, where I could have just, gone to some of the use your services, or I didn't know you at the time, could have gone to a suit shop and got exactly what I needed.
Mm.
And it probably would have cost me maybe a little bit more, but pretty equivalent, and I would still have it today. Right.
Yeah, and you're a CrossFit guy too, so you're one of the ones that you probably don't fit off the rack very well.
Big shoulders, little waist.
So if someone comes to you and says, "Okay, we're getting married. It's in, say, a year." I mean, COVID aside, what would you say invest in certain things and then find out what you can afford with other things? So do you kind of sit down with them over their finances and say, okay, this is like what, because you say the engagement ring is X amount of salary per year, which is, I mean, garbage. You should pay what you pay. Like find something you love and buy it. But what is your best advice for people to kind of just sit down and kind of pick a number? Like, is it based on salary? Is it based on what is that based on?
It's based on realistic expectations. If you're making 50 grand a year and you're planning on getting married in a year, but you want to spend 100 grand on a wedding, unless you're getting a lot of help, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the same when I put budgets together for people. Figure out what your numbers are, do some research, figure out what the expenses of putting this event, this wedding together are going to be, and then be realistic in terms of how you're going to achieve that. If you're planning on saving, what does that look like for you? Is it every month? Is it using bonuses? Is it finding another job so that you can get exactly what you want just in the short term? Like, what does that look like? But you need to be realistic in terms of what to expect and where you're going to spend your money.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's really good advice because, we don't want people going broke when they're planning for their wedding. We don't want them putting themselves in a hole. Like my wife and I spent quite a bit on our wedding, but like you said, we got a bit of help and it was pretty manageable for us. But there is still some things where we cut corners to make it work. And the decor, for one, we hired a really, really good decor person and they did a fantastic job within our budget. So you can make things work. But like you said, I think the photos are one of the most important things. Get a good photographer. Don't cheap out on that because those photos, they're going to be on your wall. They're going to be on your parents' wall. They're going to be plastered everywhere. Like that's the memories. And I think the photographer and videographer is probably the two top things to look forward to. So a lot of people are planning weddings.
Sorry, let me jump in there one. Yeah. Choosing, especially when you're looking at photographer and videographer, don't choose them based on budget though. Choose them based on personality. Because if you think about your day, you're going to spend the most amount of time with that vendor throughout the course of your wedding day. If you don't like that person, it doesn't matter how great of a job they do, you're not going to remember your wedding well.
Mm. Yeah, I remember, I think Justine just posted on Facebook that she was with a couple that she knew. I guess she worked with the bride and they were riding around in the limo together all day. So yeah, you don't want someone that you don't like riding around in the limo with you all day. Like we had a vendor that our photographer, we loved our photographer. We used Ashley Ferreira of Dragonflight and she was fantastic. Her in Berlin. Just fantastic. We were hanging out with them, we're goofing around, but she was like very strict with getting everything that we wanted done and with the timeline. Like she did a fantastic job checking reviews. Like you can look at the photos, make sure you love the photos, talk with the photographer, and then look at reviews. I mean, those are the top 3 things you should be doing. Planning 2 weddings. I talked to Shyla Slade of Valley Weddings, Fraser Valley Wedding Collective, and she said a lot of people are doing 2 weddings right now. They're doing a 50-person one this year, and then they're postponing. How do you think people should be planning on budgeting for 2 weddings?
It's that's a tough one because it's still up in the air on whether or not that'll actually, like, what your time frame is for that, because we don't know what next year is going to look like yet.
Yeah.
But don't in terms of that, figure out what you want to have this year and just budget for that. Like a lot of these 50-person weddings that I've either been to or helped out at with Justine, they're not stripped down weddings. They're still very much a wedding, but they're a lot simpler than they probably would have been had it been 150 or 200 people, or like the big weddings that we've all gone to, right? So yeah, talk to your vendor. My biggest advice right now is just talk to your vendors. Don't go asking for discounts, because you got to realize these people are all in business for themselves, and they've all been hurt by COVID just like everybody else has. But if you just talk to them and try and work something out, most of them are willing to work with their couples, because at the end of the day, they all want to do what's best for the people they're working for, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something we've done too, is a lot of companies have done little pivots to help clients with that. Like we usually take 100% up front. Like we're good with the remakes, alterations, anything that it's needed, but we split it now 50-50 if clients would like. 50% up front, 50% on delivery. So I know a lot of people are doing the same thing. So like you said, don't ask for discounts, because we're all in a tough spot, but let's try and work together to make something happen. And I like what you said too about moonlighting. Basically, moonlighting is if you take a second job to save up a bit extra for the wedding, whether it's for a little bit more of an expensive dress, or you want to pay a bit more for a photographer or a different venue. Especially when you're dual income, no kids. You're one of those dinks out there, the dual income, no kids. Now's the time to really just go hard at saving money and putting it away. So keep in mind, we are talking to couples who are engaged and about to be married. How can you help them in this season and kind of going forward, planning for their future, planning for weddings, planning for saving for a house, kids, like all these things? Where do you come in for people in that season of life?
Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. Essentially, you're taking two. It'd be the same as like merging a company or whatever, right? You're taking two completely standalone situations and trying to mash them together to make something work. The biggest advice I can give is have honest and deliberate conversations up front. Know going in kind of who's the spender, who's the saver, because there's always one of each. It's very rare that I've seen two savers together. It just doesn't happen that way typically. But be very aware of what each person is bringing to the table in terms of finances and what the expectations are. You know, it's one person might go in thinking, oh, we're just going to mash everything together and everything's going to be great. We're going to use separate joint bank accounts and it'll be super easy. And then the other person might be thinking, well, no, like I make this is mine. I want to keep my own bank account and all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, they're little conversations. They're conversations people don't typically think of having, but they're super important for afterwards. When it's now the wedding's done, everything's happened, we're into regular life. Now what?
Yeah.
So,
and that gets hard once you have kids and you're having to shell out school tuition or clothing and this and that. Like it's hard, but I agree with you. The communication. My wife and I did premarital counseling before we got married, just to kind of help set us up a bit. And that was probably one of the best things we could have done. And just having that communication, especially beforehand, like you said, you want to walk into something, you know what you're walking into. Yeah. Awesome, Marco. Thanks for doing this. So how can people get a hold of you?
Email or phone is great. Email is usually the best because then it comes to my cell phone and I have it on me quite often. So that's marco.russo@raymondjames.ca, or through our Facebook page. Okay. Either way, they're both monitored almost by the minute. We can't get away from this stuff sometimes. Yeah, fire any questions you have over to me. We're always available for questions, to set up a call or shoot an email back, say to give our opinions on stuff or help you out whatever we can.
Yeah, and I know you've given a lot of great value to me and a lot of people I know. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend you, and I hope people do reach out. So yeah, thanks again
No
for doing
problem.
this, and I'll talk
Sounds
to you
good.
soon.